Have you ever felt quietly drained? Not in a loud or dramatic way, just this slow, steady feeling like you're giving too much of yourself. Every request, every favor, every time you say yes when you don't want to, it adds up. And bit by bit, something inside you starts to fade. But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if your strength didn't come from always being available, but from knowing when to step back? What if your real power came from not reacting right away, but from being still, from being intentional? The truth is, when you stop being constantly on, things around you start to shift. People who are used to your quick replies, your endless patience, your open door, they notice the change, and not everyone handles it well. You might see some try to pull you back into old patterns, to make you feel guilty or responsible. But those reactions say more about them than about you. For a long time, maybe you've been saying yes too often, trying to keep the peace, trying to be there for everyone, even when no one asks how you're doing. And each time, a little bit of your energy slips away. By the end of the day, you feel it. That quiet tiredness, that inner frustration you can't quite name. It's the cost of being too available to people who may not deserve that kind of access to you. But this isn't about cutting everyone off. It's about reclaiming your space. It's about realizing that choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you whole. You don't need to explain or defend your boundaries. You don't need to be on call for everyone. You just need to give yourself permission to step back and let your presence become more intentional, more powerful. So ask yourself, how long will you keep letting the outside world control your inner peace? How much longer will you let guilt or habit push you into saying yes when your soul is saying no? Maybe now is the time to pause, to pull back, to return to yourself. Because when you stop being always available, everything starts to change. And if that message speaks to you, and you're curious about more ways to live deeply and intentionally, subscribe to the Thought Weaver channel. Your support helps us keep sharing ideas that matter. The illusion of constant presence. From an early age, most of us are taught to always be available, to respond quickly, to say yes, even when everything inside us is screaming no. We're told that being helpful, being reliable, being there for everyone is what makes us valuable. But here's a truth that's rarely spoken out loud. Being constantly available isn't noble. It's often a quiet kind of prison. When you believe you have to be emotionally accessible at all times, you open the door to being drained, taken for granted, or even quietly used. Why? Because when you're always around, always responding, always fixing, you become predictable, and people start to treat you less like a person and more like a tool. You turn into someone they reach for when they need something, a boost, a listener, a sense of comfort. And when they're done, they put you back, like nothing happened. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's just what people do, when we train them to believe we'll always be there. Maybe you don't even notice it happening. Maybe you think, if I'm always kind, always helpful, always responsive, someone will do the same for me. But life doesn't always return the energy you give. Often, we wear a mask, one that smiles, nods, agrees, a version of ourselves shaped by the fear of being left out, judged, or unloved. We say, it's fine, when it isn't. We explain ourselves when we shouldn't have to. We answer texts even when our soul just wants silence. All of this over-availability, isn't kindness. It's a form of self-abandonment. It's a quiet attempt to stay accepted, to be seen, to be needed. But there's a cost, your peace. You spread your energy so thin that by the end of the day you're running on empty, and still you feel like it's not enough. The power of scarcity. Here's something hard but important to hear. People who demand your constant attention often don't value you. They value what you give them, your time, your reassurance, your emotional labor. And when you stop being so available, when you start saying, "Not now," or simply don't respond the way they expect, some people won't take it well. It's not because you've done something wrong. It's because you've stopped being useful on their terms. And that's when the truth starts to show. The more available you are, the easier it is for others to take you for granted. We may not like to admit it, but what's always there tends to get overlooked. Scarcity, in a way, creates value. So here's a better question. Who truly earns the right to your time, your attention, your energy? And just as importantly, who has earned your absence? But before we dive into who deserves your energy, we need to explore something even deeper. Why do we feel the need to be so reactive, so available, so eager to please? That answer lies in how we understand and protect our inner energy. And that's where we'll go next. Because if you don't guard your energy, someone else will use it, often without even realizing they are. The flow of your inner strength. You might not think of your mind as a machine, something that reacts automatically to everything around it. But in many ways, that's exactly how we live. Every thought, every emotional reaction, every choice you make, each one draws from a limited supply of inner energy. The question is, are you choosing where that energy goes, or are you letting the world decide for you? Each time you respond out of impulse, when you argue just to prove a point, when you defend yourself against a meaningless criticism, when you give your energy to someone who doesn't value it, you're draining your strength. And for what? The more you fight what isn't worth your attention, the more you tie yourself to it. The more you react, the more you feed the very things you want to escape. Most people who feel exhausted aren't weak. Their energy is simply misdirected. And when you're constantly drained, you become vulnerable, emotionally open to anyone who knows how to pull your strings. Some people can sense that. They see your tendency to jump in, to fix things, to explain yourself, and they'll use it. They might not even realize they're doing it, but the result is the same. Your energy gets siphoned off, bit by bit, but a grounded, healthy inner state doesn't spill energy everywhere. It holds it. It protects it. That's what makes a person powerful. Not loud reactions, but quiet control. It's knowing when to say no without guilt, when to stay silent without shame, when to wait, observe, and then act with precision. True strength is intentional, and intentionality only comes when you've learned to master your own impulses. So ask yourself, how many hours have you lost overanalyzing a conversation? How many times have you replayed what you should have said or wondered why someone treated you that way? That's energy leaking. You're feeding old situations that no longer deserve your attention. Your inner energy is your power. When it's protected, you don't have to say much. Your presence speaks for you. But when it's scattered, you become reactive, anxious, and invisible. So start small. Notice your triggers. What makes you lose your center? That's where your energy escapes. And that's where your real work begins. Not to become cold or distant, but to become selective, to become sovereign. And that brings us into something more subtle, even darker. The space where silent manipulation lives. The unseen hand of manipulation. You might think you're in control of your emotional responses, that every reaction is a conscious choice. But the truth is, a lot of your reactions are programmed. Deep habits shaped by fear, by past wounds, by a need to be seen and accepted. And people who understand this, whether intentionally or not, can use it against you. They don't need to yell or demand or threaten. They just know where your emotional buttons are, and they press them. And you respond, just like they expect you to. You may think you're being helpful, loyal, kind, but often you're playing a role they've assigned to you, and you keep playing it because it feels safer than disappointing them. Think about it. The friend who only shows up in crisis, the partner who constantly leans on you to fix everything, the person who praises you, but only as long as you stay useful. These people aren't really connecting with you. They're interacting with the idea of you, the role you've unconsciously agreed to play. And why do you agree? Because deep down, you're afraid. Afraid of letting people down. Afraid of being unloved. Afraid of being alone. But here's what makes this dynamic truly powerful and dangerous. Manipulation doesn't need force. It just needs your reaction. And when you stop reacting, the whole game begins to fall apart. The moment you say no, the moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you go quiet instead of trying to smooth everything over, that mask they placed on you slips off. And now, they don't know who you are. Worse, they're left to look at themselves, and most people aren't ready for that. Your silence becomes threatening. Your distance becomes an accusation, not because you're wrong, but because you've stopped serving as their mirror. And when that happens, many will lash out. They'll guilt you, criticize you, say you've changed, not because you've done something hurtful, but because you've stopped being convenient. Here's the hard part. Are you ready for that? Are you prepared to be misunderstood, even resented, for choosing yourself? Are you willing to sit in the silence that follows, knowing that it might cost you certain relationships? Because in that silence, something powerful begins to grow, and that is what we'll explore next. Why silence, when used with awareness, isn't weakness. It's your greatest source of power, the profound power of silence. We live in a world drowning in noise. Everyone is racing to speak, to respond, to win the moment, even if it costs them their inner peace. But there is a deeper, quieter force that very few understand. Fewer still have the discipline to wield it. That force is silence. Not the silence of avoidance or fear, but the silence that comes from strength. A silence that isn't empty, but charged with awareness, presence, and power. When you stop reacting, you start observing. And when you observe, you begin to see clearly. Patterns, manipulations, your own internal loops. Silence unveils what noise hides. Ever notice how some people panic when you don't answer right away? When you stop over-explaining? When you become unavailable? It's not because they miss you. It's because your silence disrupts their script. As long as you're talking, you're playing the role they expect. But when you stop, they lose control of the narrative, and that unsettles them. True silence is not withdrawal. It's self-possession. It's the conscious decision not to bleed energy into people or situations that don't deserve it. It's choosing clarity over chaos. But this kind of silence comes with consequences. People who only knew you through your utility, your availability, your agreeableness, will call you cold. People who never bothered to understand your depth will find you hard to reach. Some will walk away. Let them, because silence reveals the truth. And as you grow, you realize, not everyone deserves access to your truth. Your words are sacred currency. Spend them wisely. Silence makes others uncomfortable because it forces them to hear their own inner noise. And in that discomfort, their true character is revealed. But the most transformative silence isn't the one that unsettles others. It's the one that rebuilds you. In that sacred inward quiet, you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. You begin to heal where no one can see, and you reclaim the energy you once scattered, trying to be everything to everyone. Now, the question is no longer how to silence the world. The question becomes, how will you redirect that energy you've reclaimed? What will you protect, prioritize, and preserve? This is where conscious unavailability becomes your next discipline. The discipline of conscious unavailability. Understanding these truths is a powerful beginning, but insight without action is just another comfortable illusion. Transformation begins when you draw the line. It starts when you say no without a full explanation. I need space without apologizing for it. Not today without guilt. Conscious unavailability isn't rudeness. It isn't arrogance. It's alignment. It's knowing your energy is finite. It's deciding who gets access to your mind, your emotions, your presence. It's refusing to be emotionally on call for people who have shown they don't value your peace. Small actions mark the beginning. Waiting before responding. Letting calls go unanswered. Logging off without warning. Holding your boundary, even when it shakes. Choosing solitude over shallow connection. But here's the most radical act of all. You stop justifying your absence. Because every time you feel the urge to explain, you're reaching for a permission slip, and you don't need one. Your peace is valid, your boundary is sacred, and your silence is reason enough. Yes, some people will call this selfish. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you've become too distant. But here's the truth. You haven't changed. You've simply stopped performing. And those who were only there for the performance, they leave. Let them. This is the sacred isolation of growth. Not a lonely exile, but an intentional retreat. It's where you strip away the false layers, where you stop being a reflection of others' needs and become a mirror for your own truth. If you want to know who you're becoming, watch who falls away when you stop reacting. Watch who grows uncomfortable with your calm. Watch who tries to bait you into old habits. Their discomfort is confirmation. You're no longer feeding their narrative. You're freeing yourself. Yes, there will be pain. There will be nights when you wonder if you've made a mistake. You'll miss the noise, not because it nourished you, but because it was familiar. But beyond that silence, something is waiting. Not more chaos, not more drama. Something deeper, something reborn. And that is exactly where we go next. What rises from this silence? What becomes possible when you choose the loneliness of the strong? We're about to explore the truth behind solitude as power, and how standing alone, misunderstood and unwavering, leads to the most unshakable freedom of all. There comes a point on this journey when the silence settles in, not just around you, but within you. The distractions are gone. The performance has ended. The masks, both yours and theirs, have fallen away. And what's left? You. Just you. No longer sustained by external validation. No longer driven by the need to be understood. No longer desperate to be liked, needed, or wanted by people who only loved what you could offer, not who you truly are. This silence isn't empty. It's sacred. It's the silence where your real self finally speaks. But with this self-ownership comes an unavoidable cost: loneliness. Not the loneliness of abandonment, but the loneliness that comes from standing at a higher altitude, where fewer can breathe. Because real strength is quiet. It doesn't demand to be seen. It doesn't beg to be accepted. And often, It's misunderstood, feared, even resented. People will say you've changed. They'll call you distant, detached, hard. But in truth, you've simply stopped being emotionally available to anyone who doesn't value you. You've stopped negotiating your worth. You've stopped leaking your energy into places that only returned emptiness. This kind of solitude isn't a punishment, it's a purification. It's the space where you no longer react to life, but respond to it, deliberately, wisely, and on your terms. And eventually, something shifts. You begin to attract different energy, calmer, clearer, stronger. People who aren't threatened by your silence, but drawn to it. People who don't want to use you, but to see you. People who recognize your boundaries because they have their own. But even if they never come, you'll be whole. You'll no longer seek completion through others because you'll have found it in yourself. This is the final truth. Freedom isn't loud, it's still. Power isn't in dominance, it's in detachment. And the strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones who learned how to stand alone, without bitterness, without drama, without noise. So if you find yourself in that silence now, lonely, doubting, tempted to go back to who you once were, don't. You are not lost. You are simply being rebuilt. And what comes next is not just peace, it's sovereignty, it's clarity, it's freedom, and above all, it's the return to yourself.